first.
I don't assume we were winning.
It wasn't good.
Okay. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to open the meeting on May 25th, 2015. First, order of business, do we have any board member reports?
We do, but I don't have to go first.
Bill, you want to talk about the site visit to 270 Harwood?
Is that on? Well, it's on the agenda later.
Oh, yeah,
on.
we'll wait then. Okay.
Yeah. In regards to board member reports, I went down and took some pictures after the letter was received with the petition in regards to a property here in town that I'd like to see put on the agenda next meeting.
And that letter should be in your packets.
So that's the
Okay.
Taylor Street property.
Yes, 11 through 15, Taylor.
I'd support putting that. Shelley, I understand there's been some correspondence between the building inspector and others on some of this. If we could have copies of that, just so we're all on the same page. That'd be great. Anything else, Bill?
Nope, I'm done.
John,
Thank
anything?
you.
Second meeting? No? Ed?
Okay, I met with the emergency management director and several other people, and we are moving forward with a medical needs sheltering plan. It would be a regional plan. We have a subcommittee going with the Region 3A planner, that's Westford and Chelmsford going north of Department of Public Health. And we're doing thinking about doing one with the MRC and EMS because of high needs sheltering when it occurs, if it occurs, so that instead of a town doing a whole shelter and then having to do an independent medical needs shelter for those that really can't go to the hospital, don't need to be in the hospital, but can't be in their homes and need a little more attention than a shelter, that we do one regionally. And so we'd share MRC volunteers with that. They'd rotate in and out depending on if there are people in Littleton that need this this shelter. So it's sort of a specialized kind of it's just a specialty shelter. And we're meeting monthly on it, and I got pulled into it last month, and we had our second meeting, and it looks like it's going to go forward, and I think it will benefit the town, especially if we were to have a larger incident.
So it's regionalized.
It will be regionalized, will be part of it, maybe will be Chelmsford, Westford, Littleton. So it's not super spread out, but it's enough that, gee, Scott doesn't have to worry about all the people that might have to be transported here and there. We can have a place, whether it's Westford or Littleton, where people can go if there is a disaster that needs some attention and there's people in it that need more than just going to the general shelter at the gym with other people.
So it's referred to as a special needs
A medical needs shelter.
Okay.
So it would be
we were-
nurses present or something like physicians. Or
Exactly, yeah. All the MRC volunteers that are healthcare certified and licensed. And, you know, we may never have to use it, but at least we have it if we need it.
Anything else?
Yes. We are, the executive committee of the MRC is meeting with EMS on Thursday, the 28th. And we're sort of reconfiguring the executive committee. A number of people are leaving town, retired, that sort of a thing. We're sort of having a turnover. So Cheryl Lichtenberg, Ken Atkins, Louise Curley will no longer be on the executive committee. And Shelley, I can just send you those names by email if you want. And there is a MRC member stepping up to the plate to chair it, and that would be Alex McCurdy, and he works with with Scott currently doing MRC stuff, and we're all going to be going towards a CERT group in the MRC, so that's why he would be a really good pick for that because of his fire background. So we just need to vote him in as a member of the executive committee and as a chair. So we need to do that tonight.
And you have several people leaving. Are you looking for new people to fill in, or do you already have those?
We're going to be doing an event in June to get more people in, but we have to do one step at a time. So I'd like to make a motion to add Alex McCurdy to the executive committee and to have him fill the place of chair as we go into a CERT component with the MRC. I need a second from somebody.
No, second.
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Other than, I know we were going to talk at some point about some of the list of the needs that we want to add, but I didn't know when you wanted to do that, and it wasn't on the agenda, so.
Well, I forget about it until
Discussion.
Bill and I were talking about it ahead of time, so we may have to put it on the agenda for next time, or maybe we should all come with a list, or I don't know. Can we cover that today?
Can we
or-
just do a
We can talk about
discussion?
it, yeah.
Let's do it under discussion. So we were talking, I know we have the private wells.
Yes.
I think we need to do something, and we specifically need to put something on Taylor Street on the next agenda for the hoarders and how we deal with that. What else did you have on the list, Dan?
I was thinking of, I know there's a bunch of failed septic systems in town, people that have applied for permits, then they have 2 years to get that sorted out. Sometimes it's 4 years. Back in 2010, when we had the housing issue, the governor extended it to 4, but right now it's 2. So there's, I guess, a number of, over the past couple years, Shelley, we've had a number of complaints of different septic systems failing, whatever. Jim's mentioned it a few times. So I just think it would be good to look into that, figure out how big of a problem that is, if it is that big of a problem, and who that might apply to, and then figure out how judiciously we want to go forward with dealing with that, because that's, we're over septic, so.
So Bill, I know at one point you stepped up to be part of the sewer committee, one of the sewer committees. Has that group been meeting at all? I know there's a little bit of overlap with some of this.
No, I was not me. I wasn't on the sewer committee.
Okay, I thought there was some committee that had to do with the sewer.
It's sewer feasibility committee, but I don't think they've met in like a
I don't think
year.
they've met. Yeah.
And they didn't bring anything to town meeting this time because of the financials. I think that's the financials is a big jam up.
No, I don't think they've been meeting, but I can check with Megan Ford and see where they are, because it seems like there's at least some overlap between what they're doing and some of the failed systems, particularly in the center, so.
I
Sure.
agree with you there, 100%. I think that I may be wrong, but I think the sewer feasibility study committee kind of disappeared because they didn't get any continuing funding.
That's what I think.
See, I had spoken to Megan probably 9 months ago, and she thought there was funding from Executive Office of Environmental Affairs coming up.
Oh,
But let me talk to Megan and figure out where they are, because, I mean, I don't want to act completely independently. There is some overlap between their plans for sewer and some of the failing systems. That doesn't mean we should let horrendously failing systems continue. On the other hand, we do want to coordinate to the extent we can without putting anybody at risk, I think.
right.
Sure. And I want to talk to Jim, too, as he's mentioned several times that there are a number of these failed systems, and we've had people over the past few years, at least since you've been on, that have said, hey, did you realize this system's in failure, blah, blah, blah. Also, we've had, I shouldn't do the blah, 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 sorry. Also, there's been, the businesses in the center of town, there's been a problem with one of the buildings in current failure that we passed, the package building.
Yeah. And I do think
okay,
there's a difference
so-
between technical failure when it's obviously
Yeah.
overflowing and causing
Right.
a problem.
Yeah.
And during those discussions, the term catastrophic failure was brought up. And, my feelings at that time, and they haven't changed, is do we wait until there's a catastrophic failure? Or
Did we deal with
if
it?
the
Yeah.
system's been in failure for 7 or 8 years, do we do something about it or wait until there is a catastrophic situation?
Well, I don't think we should wait till a catastrophic. Hopefully there'd be something in between technical and catastrophic that would give us a heads up, but if not, I would say we'd err on the side
There
of
was
some
one
caution.
case where that happened, and
Well, yeah, and
nothing happened.
yeah, and I think in addition to what you just said, something in the middle, I think also a process. We need a process
Agreed.
where there's, okay, it's been 2 years, let us know what your plan is to deal with this, and it maybe help sort through
maybe we can prioritize.
Direction, prioritize, make,
Consistent approach.
exactly, so that everyone's treated
Yeah,
fairly and the
consistent.
same.
Make sure we get some input from people and where they stand, and then
Yeah.
maybe there's some interim measures we can do.
Yeah, and so, input from Jim, input from other people, and then just see how we can handle that going forward. But I know that that's been a back burner past couple
But
of
Bill,
years.
I do agree, we don't want to wait till there's a catastrophic failure, so.
Yeah.
Right, and I am wholeheartedly in favor of what Ian is saying, because I'd like to see the board take care of some things that have been going on before we tackle new stuff that, and this all falls in line with prioritizing.
Agreed.
So getting back to the original question on the list of things, I think the failed systems, I think we have had a number of hoarding situations that I've been privy to follow with Jim, because I've been involved with something at the beginning of it, and then we just followed it through together, and then other people have followed in and jumped in, and everyone's seen 15 Crestview, everyone's seen 261 Goldsmith, and then there's the Taylor Street that sort of got pushed out, I don't know, a couple years ago. So there's a number of hoarding, failed system, and then we do need an up-to-date private well reg. And that comes down from Jim's request, but also from the DEP trainings that I've been to, and I've seen and passed out a couple of times DEP's template of a good private well reg that maybe someone can work on and kind of figure out how we can kind of make ours more up-to-date. So those are the things I see.
Bill, you've been around for a while, anything else you want to add to that list?
Not right at the moment,
All right.
but if this is going to be on the agenda, it'll give us all time to think about it, if it's going to be on the next agenda.
Shelley, maybe we could leave that rather generic, so if anybody comes up with anything in the interim.
So we're going to put this on the agenda for next time in terms
Yes.
of how to deal and what to deal and how to go
And what
forward.
I have so far is hoarding, with a particular emphasis on 270 Harwood, permits for failed systems, and private wells.
Okay, I'm sorry, 270 Harwood for hoarding?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, not 270 Harwood, the Taylor Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
11/15. or 11 through 15.
And then can we put 261 Goldsmith on that one, please? And then 15 Crestview, and I think honestly,
I think we're going to put I think we should be ready to talk about any place where there's been an allegation of hoarding, but within that universe, I think we're going to need to prioritize, and
absolutely.
I'm guessing that Taylor Street probably is
Okay.
top of that list.
And then I think we
100%
could-
on that, too.
And then I think we can just get an update from Jim on 261 and 15. We did send 261 an order to go to Housing Court if she didn't clean up about a year ago. So I just want updates from Jim on terms of, he's going to by and checking the properties. So we just probably want to get an update on 261 and 15 from him, and sort of a recommendation is what I would request.
Yeah, and also any comment, copies of any other correspondence with other boards. I hate not operating in sync with them. So. I think we're going to go out of order. Sam, since it's 7:15 and we are scheduled on 5 Arc Place.
Okay.
You want to come up?
Did Sherry send you Jim's comments?
No.
I just got them at 4 o'clock, and I sent them to her, and I got the I'm away email.
She's away, so.
Is that them? Oh my gosh.
I have a copy here.
Jim, so.
Yeah.
Do you want to review those for a minute, Sam?
Yeah, do you mind giving me just a second?
Nope.
Because I didn't see these yet.
What's that?
Yep.
So you want to just tell us what's going on here and what you guys are looking for?
Yep, I'm Sam Gould, and I'm here on behalf of my client, who's Allison Kaiser. She just bought the property on 5 Arc Place last week. She's a 15-year Littleton resident and a member of the community. She has 2 small children, ages 9 and 11. She's got part-time custody of them, and she just went through a divorce. So part of her motivation is that she wants a finished basement space for her 2 children, to get them out from underfoot. She won't be exceeding the capacity of the septic system, because at any given point in time, there's going to be 3 people living there under her occupancy of the property. And that's only part-time, because she doesn't have custody of her children all the time. It's one of these small lake lots. I think you can see where it is. Looks like a deed restriction was put on the property already in 1992, putting everyone on notice that's a 2-bedroom, and a 2-bedroom house was constructed on the property. But there's a basement area that she'd like to carpet and put a TV in for her kids. It really isn't, by any stretch of the imagination, could be considered a bedroom, because it's got a sliding glass door out to the outside, and there's no windows other than that, and it sort of isn't a usable bedroom space. It just would be a rec room for her kids.
So the issue is the number of rooms, based on the formula we use, would suggest that it's a 3-bedroom, as I understand it.
The number of rooms in the existing house, you mean?
Yeah,
With before the.
so by adding the finished basements, it adds another room technically. How high is the ceiling in the basement?
I would have to look at that. I don't have that answer. off the top of my head.
Full ceiling?
So it's 7 feet? Is the ceiling 7 feet?
If it's under 7 feet, it doesn't count as a room, that's why I asked.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I didn't think it was 7 feet,
Or is
but
that
I
still
only
the,
looked.
still the rule, or did they change that one?
No, the housing code, that's still the road. I don't know about building.
It has a slider going off the side,
Let's just see if it's
so
So it probably is.
above the slider,
It's in
so.
The slider's probably 6'8", so
Okay.
it should be in the drawings. Shelley, the formula for, what is the formula these days, and is it in regulation or is it guidance?
Well, what Jim goes by to sign a building permit is whatever the system is designed for, the number of bedrooms multiplied by 2 plus 1 is the maximum rooms of living space you can have in a house.
And where does that formula come from? And do you know?
Comes from Title V.
So it's in regulation.
Yeah, it's in regulation.
And is there a variance process for that?
Well, basically, if it goes outside of that, Jim can't, under his authority, sign the
Yeah,
building
so
permit.
no.
And that's when he
Can't
has
really.
the people come here for the board to, at their discretion, either
But the board- does
approve,
the board have
deny,
the
or
dis-
allow a
Does the board have the
deed
discretion to do that when it's in Title V regulations?
It's not an uncommon request in the lake area, unfortunately. I mean, there's a lot of properties that have it.
And it may also be in the housing, and as far as the housing goes, and I really think it's Title V because it's tied to the septic, it's the formula for the septic. I've never seen a variance for that. I've never heard of one, I've never seen it. That's why, it's kind of like, that's where the buck stops in terms of allowing people to add on rooms and bedrooms and that sort of a thing. I think we did make an exception a few weeks ago in terms of just adding a deed restriction to someone's house, but they weren't gonna finish, they weren't gonna add on more.
It was already finished without permits.
Yeah.
That's what that case. Generally, that's what comes before you, is when people
So-
have finished a room without a permit, and then they go to sell their house, and they can't because they have too many rooms under their permit.
If we're going to allow a deed restriction for somebody who violates the building code and puts in one without it, it would seem kind of silly for us to do the same for somebody who comes before us and actually asks permission ahead of time.
What about
Right.
an update to her deed restriction? That was the only thing I was thinking of. I mean, the deed restriction is a 92 deed restriction,
Right.
so it's in the chain of the title, but it's sort of like not current. So what if I put on a deed from her to herself, renewing the deed restriction, so it was quite clear that she's aware of the deed restriction and everybody going forward would see that deed restriction? Because that's the objective of the deed restriction.
No, I understand what you're asking for, but that's essentially what we did for the English gentleman last month, who, I mean, somebody had illegally finished the basement, and we allowed him to have a finished basement as illegal. It would seem kind of silly for us to say somebody comes before us beforehand to ask for it.
Well, it's already done. It was done.
I understand, but
But it was on-
we're creating an incentive to do it illegally.
Right. Another thing that's been done in the past is it's been, listed that it can never be a sleeping area. The room, the area can never be used as a sleeping area, which,
Yeah, I'll be honest, if we were in Alston or someplace with a large student community or immigrant community, I'd be worried that people would violate. I'm not as worried here.
This is the base.
So I'm not really worried about it, but I'm wondering what's legal. But the fact that we can't violate the DEP regulations, on the other hand, it seems like we did allow a deed restriction for something that had been done illegally,
Sliding glass door.
which to me would seem
That right there.
kind of contrary to good policy.
well, technically, this was done legally too, because the occupancy permit said unfinished basement. It was permitted for unfinished
Right.
basement, and they finished it. And when the building inspector went in to do his final inspection, the basement was finished.
Right. But he hasn't signed off yet, or he
No,
has?
he has, but they unfinished it. They ripped up the carpet and they took out the, heat
That was
air
the
conditioning.
previous owners.
No.
No,
In
she
order
did.
to get her building permit
Okay.
last week,
Okay.
that's what
Okay.
happened. So it is an
Okay.
unfinished basement currently. So she's coming before you to ask permission to
put the carpet
rubber
back.
back
carpet
in.
back and to put the heat back in, because that's what she wanted
Right.
when she signed on to buy this property. The builder just,
Looking at the plan, it looks to me like it's a 6-room house.
Yeah, with this finished.
And- Since the deed restriction was in place, somebody didn't pass that information on to the purchaser, I guess. On top of that, if the contractor or the builder wanted to build this house,
Yep.
all he had to do was redesign the system and replace the 2-bedroom system with a 3-bedroom system, and he probably would have been good to go. But trying to build this house that only a 2-bedroom system is going to accommodate is looking for trouble down the road, I think. I don't think the system would handle 3 bedrooms.
Not if someone after that moved in with 2 people capacity for each bedroom. That's the
So
problem.
if somebody actually used it as a bedroom. And I would agree with you, except it doesn't seem like we're consistently interpreting it that way. When that gentleman came before us for a deed restriction for a finished basement, last meeting, the meeting before, and we granted it.
And it was a different situation.
It wasn't that different. Yeah, the difference was they weren't open about it. They illegally finished it and had been using it before the.
Was that new construction?
Hang on, there was
No.
something.
No, that wasn't, that's
No,
right.
no,
He was
no.
doing that because he was selling the house.
Right.
And he
Right.
purchased the house under the impression that everything was done legally.
Right,
But then it
Right.
was found out that none of it was permitted.
right. And he had an extra bedroom
Right.
beyond what the system could.
But it wasn't finished.
No, it was finished. That was the
Oh, okay,
issue.
that's right. It was finished, but now he cannot use it as,
So it's the same
As
situation
we
as
found out
this,
it-
except we get it after the fact when he went to sell it, not when somebody came and wanted
And
to
this
finish
is
it.
new
but we're finding,
construction.
and we're finding out earlier too, because it's not finished yet. I mean, maybe it
Right.
was, but we're finding out earlier. So that's the tricky part.
Well, except the problem I have, and I wouldn't mind saying no if we said no to everybody, but the person who did it illegally and came to us at the last minute when they sold the house, we gave them the okay. The person who's upfront about it comes to us and said, we'd like to finish it, can we do it? We're gonna say no.
Well, they weren't really upfront
Not
about
sure
it
we're sending
because
the
they
right
did it.
message.
Yeah, well, I'm
They
not
weren't
sure
really
we did.
upfront about it
my
because the
clients-
house plan, the house that was built isn't the one we're looking at.
Right.
but my client's upfront about it because she found out at the 11th hour that she was getting a house without a finished basement.
Well,
and-
this isn't really about her because this all happened prior to her coming on,
Yeah, but it's not.
on
But I'm
board.
saying, she's asking permission before she, I mean, she certainly wants to do this legally. She wants to have permission for finished basement.
Well, from a legal standpoint, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody here on the board, if it was done legally, the builder wouldn't have done this and tried to sell her a house based on these plans, knowing that it's a restricted deed and the system is only for 2 bedrooms. So the easiest, probably not the cheapest, easiest way to get around all of this is if the contractor replaces the existing system to accommodate a 3-bedroom house that he built.
When she bought it, was it
When-
listed as 6 rooms?
Yeah. And the contractor is, I mean, she's the purchaser for value. There's no contractor anymore. he had other issues with Roland in the building department, so.
Bill, I wouldn't disagree with you, except I see this as being more upfront and transparent than the last situation we dealt with. You know, we're almost creating an incentive for people to not tell us and come to us at the last minute versus come to us and be upfront. And I have a hard time, we didn't make the last person rip out the system or put in a larger system, we just put a deed restriction in.
Right, but maybe what we need to do as a board is offline, once we settle this one, figure out how we're gonna handle these, because I know we're gonna get more, and we get them before the fact, we get them after the fact, we just need to be consistent.
I would agree.
And I think, you know, this is a situation where we allow bedrooms or sleepable space, let's say, this has a big enough window in here on this floor to be considered a bedroom, technically by chapter 2, which is,
The basement area?
yeah, because you've got a sliding glass in
Slider.
there, right? It has to be a certain percent, it has to have 8% of the floor space in
How big is the
windowed.
floor space?
In windowed, whatever. So a
basement
sliding
area
glass
floor.
door.
Well, how big is the floor space?
I don't know.
You got it
What?
here.
It's 200 square feet. So that's 16 square feet, so it's, you know, 8
So
by
eight-
2. It all has to be
Is 1,000
8 by
square
2. It's bigger than 8 by 2,
Yeah.
you know.
On the other hand, we didn't ask these
so-
questions last time. So I agree, we need a consistent, we need a policy, but until we do, I have difficulty holding people to different standards.
Well, maybe, but I'm just saying, the other one, I don't think had the window space, if I remember right. That's why I'm bringing it up. I'm just saying that
I
this.
don't remember that
this-
discussion taking place with them.
Yeah, maybe not, but I don't remember the windows. And so that's the other part of this that I'm thinking through, Brad.
I'm sorry, the finished area on the basement is only 204 square feet according to this plan.
Correct.
So you
That's what we
would
just
need a
said.
minimum of 16 square feet of window space, which this exceeds.
And
We
it
didn't
does,
ask that at the
so-
last one. Again, I don't have a problem holding people to the standard. I agree it should go back to the builder or some other person, but I do have a problem not being consistent and holding people to kind of go through the process and come to us to a different standard than
Yeah.
people come to us after the fact.
Well,
Start that
I looked at it, when I was looking at the plans before the meeting, I think about those things. But at the same point, you know, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying, I did think about those things, and I'm thinking that,
I understand those things, I've been through this, I think we need to set a policy, we need discussion on that, and it shouldn't be triggered by,
Well, the policy is already in place, and the difference here is, the gentleman that came in here before didn't do the finished basement. He bought the house like that, and he was trying to sell it, and he came to the realization through a little bit of investigation that everything that was done in his basement was done without permitting. This is new. This is new construction. And the house that was built basically isn't the one that was presented to the building department. Am I wrong?
or before us.
It says unfinished basement, he finished the basement, and there's been some other issues that don't involve the Board of Health. But I agree with you 100%, Brad, about consistency. And if we say okay to this, then we are being consistent. We're saying okay.
I don't think we're being
Okay,
consistent with our
okay.
last decision, Bill.
And I just have a problem with new construction that's done, and then later on, a variance is asked for. And
I
it's-
agree
it's
with you.
been- It's happened to this board 4 times
And I have
since
the-
I've been a member.
I have the same concern, but I have a bigger concern for people who do it illegally and then come to us and get permission to do it after the fact. I mean, that gentleman sold his house with a finished basement. What we're creating by doing so is an incentive for people to do this without a permit.
So by
I-
allowing this, we're
So I think
stopping
we have to
that?
allow both, or we have to allow neither.
Well, the other one is history.
I know, but
That's
moving forward, what are we
done
gonna
deal.
do? So if somebody comes to us and they had a legal basement finish, project, are we gonna waive them and allow them to sell the house with a finished basement, even though they exceed the room numbers? But the people actually come to us and seek permission, we're gonna say no to? That doesn't seem fair.
Where does it end?
Well, I think we have to ask where it starts.
So just taking the carpet out removes the designation of a big bedroom or consideration?
Roland required them to disconnect the venting, so they did, they disconnected the vents.
Okay.
So it was the carpet
So
and
there
the
was
vents.
also
And also any.
forced air carpet, or
Yeah,
forced air.
yes. And any of the other inspection issues that Roland have been complied with. She has a
Pass
full
that down, Brad. I don't know.
Yeah, John, if you want to look at this. Yeah, I guess I side with Bill on this in that I think the guy that came to us last time, and maybe we need to talk about this offline later, he was unaware of what had happened earlier, that he had bought the house, it was finished, and he bought it finished and didn't know, and we see, and just to be the devil's advocate here, Brad, we see this a lot. We see people selling houses for X amount of bedrooms, lo and behold, they try to upgrade their bathroom, or they try to do X, Y, and Z. They come in, they try to get permits, we pull everything, and lo and behold, good night, I only have a 3-bedroom, I thought I had a 4. We see it all the time.
No, I've seen it several times since I've been here, but I haven't
So-
necessarily seen a consistent approach.
So, well, we need one, but I'm just saying that I see that we have to draw the line also, it's being consistent, but also understanding that I think last time was a little bit different in that, it was,
Well, we could have
He-
very
he-
easily
he
asked that
didn't-
gentleman to pull out the heating system and the carpets too, and we
Well,
didn't.
Exactly, and I understand that. I understand that point. But I think at the same time, we have to figure out for people, for going forward, what's fair and what is judicious. And they
Yeah.
did pull up the carpet, and they did take out the heating, and,
I agree, and I don't think it has to happen offline. I think we should have it here, and it should be an agenda item on how to deal with these, but
I mean,
where we
offline
haven't
from
been
right now.
haven't been consistent on this, I'd be more inclined to give somebody who comes before us and is open about it than the last gentleman. And for all we know, he did build that. We don't know. We took his word for that.
okay, so just to clarify, offline, I meant not inside this hearing. We need to do it as a board, as a different agenda point.
And, I mean, if you take away the rules and you think about it in common sense, this
Yeah.
isn't Alston, it's not a student ghetto, it's not a big immigrant area. I mean, I would frankly like to apply the rules consistently, and that formula should be applied to every situation. But where we haven't, I have difficulty applying it here.
Problem is, we haven't had a plan, consistent plan going forward.
Well, and I
so-
think we need to do that, but I
Oh,
don't think we can start with one applicant coming before us.
So maybe we want to put this off and then make a decision and then
Or-
have her come back? That's one option.
Give these folks the benefit of the doubt, and from here, talk about this next time and move forward with a consistent policy afterwards.
I don't think there is anybody, and I may be totally wrong, so I'll just say myself, I don't doubt for 1 minute that even though the heat has been removed, the carpet has been removed, I don't doubt for 1 minute that that room is going to be finished off and it's going to be used as a bedroom. That being said, we don't have house police that go in and check to see if these things are, stay the way they were supposed to. Because the sale of this house, basically, I would think, was based partially on the fact that that downstairs was going to be finished, that it will be. I just don't like the idea of a set of plans coming to the Board of Health and to the Building Department. And here again, Brad, I got to go back to new construction. And they end up building an entirely different plan than what was submitted. And it's happened to us 2 or 3 times. And, like I said, why are we here? Pretty much, why are we here? We have rules and regulations, and I am not big on rules and regulations, but if we have them and we don't enforce them, why have them in the first place? And this has happened more times than I care to even think about. And I just feel as though the board is basically wasting their time because the rules are circumvented. We have variances to apply under certain circumstances. I mean, I think people are given every break possible. But we've had things come before us that are done, and then after the fact, it's either tried to explain to us or asked for a variance, and it's granted. And if this is granted, it's not going to stop, because the next person is going to come in, and if they do a little bit of history, they're going to, look back and say, well, they did it, why can't I?
Well, like,
And
just
if the
look at the last meeting. they said
certificate
that.
of occupancy, is held to the letter of the law, which says a new single-family dwelling with garage under 2-bedroom, unfinished basement. And yes, they finished it. And yes, the carpet has been ripped out, the heat has been taken out. But I'll go back to how I started. That's all going to end up back in there. And I sincerely think that the only way that this should be permitted is if the system is replaced and a 3-bedroom system is put there to accommodate the house that's built.
Shelley, you had a suggestion?
I was gonna, sort of along Bill's line, and this would be something you would have to discuss with your client, but I recall one a couple years ago that they made the stipulation that if the property is sold or if the system fails, when it's replaced, it has to be for 6 rooms, which would be a 3-bedroom system. So they allowed it to stay as it was, but at property transfer or failure, they had to upgrade to a 3-bedroom system.
Bill, I agree with you. I just don't think we've been consistent, and I hate holding one person to a higher standard than the other. As far as the rules go, I do think the board exists to some extent to use some discretion. And I think we need a discussion how we're going to consistently do these things in the future, but I hate to start with the odd person who steps in front of us and asks for the same consideration that we've given to other people in previous cases. John, you've been quiet. Any thoughts?
So, one, could we legally grant this? So I was a little confused. That was a question earlier, or discussion earlier.
You can grant a deed restriction.
Right.
And generally, when deed restrictions are granted, they're with conditions.
Right.
I do like your conditions.
Right, so I agree with you on this, Brad, that going forward, we need to come up with what our consistent approach is. This is someone that's come to us and asked for a deed restriction or a variance on this, so I don't see a reason why not to, if there's no legal reason for us to not do it.
But I think what you're here for is to put back in the carpet and the heating. That's what she's here for.
Well,
Yes,
to put
yeah,
it,
and put a deed
to
restriction
put it
in.
in, because she took title to a property without the carpet and without the heating and without a finished basement, clearly. So she's asking, for
Right.
legal permission to finish her basement.
I apologize. Somebody asked my son. I just want to make sure he's not
Excuse
hurt.
me, I'm sorry, but she took possession of the property
Yeah, the building permit was signed,
without the
Without
basement
the basement.
finished?
yes.
So was there a separate building permit taken out to finish the basement?
No,
No.
it can't be signed because Jim can't sign it. So they want to take out a building permit, but Jim can't sign it, which is why Sam's here. Because without the board
Right, so the carpet was
proving
in,
it,
everything
they
was set
cannot
up, they wouldn't
issue
sign
a
up.
building permit
Right.
for the basement.
I'm sorry,
No, that's
Shelley, what?
confusing.
No, no,
We're
no.
confused
so-
on the order of things. So did
Yeah.
the builder put this in, or did she?
The
The
builder put it
builder.
in, and then the builder took it out according to instructions from
Because they
Roland.
couldn't get the certificate of occupancy
Right.
signed with it in, so he took everything out, disconnected the
So-
heating system. She's taken
And at what point did
possession.
she purchase it?
After everything was undone.
Undone. So did she have an expectation going into this purchase that there was a finished basement?
When she signed purchase and sale, absolutely.
Wow.
Right.
Absolutely. So,
That's-
single mom, 2 small kids,
So
expected a rec room.
at the point, the plans were, it hadn't been done yet, Roland hadn't acted yet, her impression was that it would be a,
Yes. And please, let me distance myself as far as possible from this builder, because he's not my client.
yeah, well, it does sound like her issue really was with the builder at some point, because he didn't deliver on the purchase and sale.
Absolutely, that's a totally separate issue,
The
and,
builder too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
did you
building
say,
department's
let me go back, did you say she has 2 children,
Part-time.
part-time,
Yeah.
and a third?
No, she's the third. She's a single mom with two
Okay,
part-time
I'm glad
children.
I got that
Yeah,
straight.
no, single mom,
But,
two.
she purchased the house with the finished basement.
No, actually, let me clarify. She signed a purchase and sale with a finished basement. When she signed her purchase and sale contract, she expected that she would have a home with a rec room and a finished basement for her children.
Okay.
At the time she purchased the home, she knew that the basement would be unfinished because that was Roland's
But
instruction.
it was.
No. At the time she purchased the home, the basement was unfinished. Before Roland issued the building permit, the basement was undone.
She bought this and.
She bought this
While it was
without a
under
finished
construction,
basement.
essentially.
Yes.
No, yeah. I mean, she bought it
But
completed.
before it was given the occupancy
Right,
permit.
exactly. She bought it
With the understanding, both in the purchase and sales and having viewed the home, that there'd be a finished basement.
when she signed the contract to purchase, yes. When she sat down at the table to close the deal, and when she purchased it, there was no finished basement. The occupancy had been issued without a finished basement.
I have an idea. Shelley, has this builder done this before? Was this one of the builders that has been, is this
Do you know who the builder
a
is?
repeat?
Wilson.
Is this a repeat?
I don't think it's, I can
know.
respond to
Okay.
him without him being here to,
You don't know, okay. Because I think if it is, I think that builder should put in a three-bedroom septic for her.
Is that a realistic expectation?
It's expensive, but I think.
No, I don't mean
that-
realistic as far as whether he can afford it or not. It sounds like the guy is in a little bit of
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah. She purchased from him with an unfinished basement. She can't go back to him.
When was
Okay.
when was the basement finished?
The basement was finished
The
prior
day
to.
after she signed,
No,
The
the basement
sale?
the basement was finished prior to Roland's inspection, and then unfinished prior to Roland issuing occupancy.
So she went ahead with the
So-
closing, the walkthrough, knowing that it was unfinished.
Correct. Correct. That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
But she had expectations of a finished basement because that's what she contracted for,
So she-
originally.
She bought the house, put the initial down then when it was unfinished.
Correct.
Okay.
so the time between when Roland goes out and does his insulation inspection and his final inspection, a lot of work goes on.
Right.
So in that time, they had set up a closing, they'd set up all this, she had her purchase and sale listing it as a finished basement. Roland went in to do the final, has the building permit card that says unfinished basement, and he says, what's this?
I
And
would have
so
thought the
he says-
electrical would have shown that it was a finished area, though, right?
Yeah, there's definitely electrical in there.
I mean, if it was living space, there's number of outlets and all that kind of
There's
stuff.
definitely
I would think
outlets
that
in
would
there
have
and,
suggested,
you know,
but I
cable
know you
outlet.
get an electrical inspector doesn't catch it. or
well, you can
whatever.
still have outlets without it being living space. I mean, you have outlets in the
But
garage.
usually the number of outlets per area will indicate whether it's going to be a living space or utility space.
No, I understand that, but this
Regardless, it
whole
wasn't
business
done.
of when the passing took place and when the finishing of the basement took place, clearly this wasn't done on the up and up. And, you know, the last one we came across like this, something wasn't done on the up and up. And the reason why it was approved was because we didn't want to inconvenience the neighbor.
Right,
And
right. This
here,
was a
you know,
big
this is so similar.
Yeah.
You know, the builder is the one that created this situation, and basically, we're gonna pass it because it's the individual who bought the property that's gonna suffer. Yeah, I'm telling you, as much as I feel bad for her, I think the builder should put in a three-bedroom septic system
That's what I think.
and accommodate the builder, the house that he built.
So we have three options. We can say no and basically say the building inspector needs to put, and the builder should be putting in a three-bedroom system and her issue is with him. We can approve it with the simple deed restriction as you suggested, or we can approve it with a deed restriction and further restrictions about upgrading the system if it ever fails or if there's a transfer of property, which is what Shelley has suggested. Is there any more discussion? Does anyone want to
Just,
make a motion?
I guess just one question about that point, as I was thinking about it, does that land, that lot lend itself to
Could you ever put a three-bedroom?
a three-bedroom system on it? Or would
I
now
can
we'd
tell you
be
the square
coming
footage
back in a few years or whenever that
Is that
request would be. You know, are we gonna have to be talking about substantial?
21,200 square feet.
Oh,
So-
then it does have big enough. That's
Yeah.
big enough.
Well, it depends
It's
on
half
the
an
perk and
acre.
everything else.
Yeah.
It's half an acre.
For that area, it's
Yeah, that's
above
almost,
an average size lot.
yes.
21,000.
And just for frame of reference, she doesn't have the ability to go after the builder
Yeah,
at
that's.
this point,
Okay.
because she's the owner of the property. And she signed, I know I'm not getting the property without a finished basement, because otherwise he wouldn't let her move her stuff in, and she had belongings on a truck.
So she did go into this with full knowledge of what the situation was.
She knows what the situation is, she's just crying her eyes out.
And Jim's biggest concern is that it's on record that, you know, this, he feels exceeds the capacity of a two-bedroom, and, you
No,
know,
it
he
clearly
wants the
does. When we-
protection so that it doesn't come back onto the board for the
I
approval.
mean, when we have a policy of, number of bedrooms times 2 plus 1, this clearly exceeds that.
Yep.
But to be realistic, we have allowed it to be exceeded before. I don't agree with that. I think we need to, after this, I think we should put on next meeting, we need to sit down and set this forward. If we're gonna tell this person no, we should have told that English gentleman that he had to rip it out and pull out the heating and the carpet too. We didn't do that. So, any more discussion? Do we want to make a motion?
I need a minute to think, if you don't mind.
And can I just add one more thing? Sherry called today and said if the board was, you know, not feeling good about this, to continue it until the next meeting.
We can do that.
So
as
she
well.
could be present, so.
I mean, Bill, I agree with everything you said, but I also know that, one, if not her, somebody else is probably just gonna do the same thing. And two, you could get around the whole thing by putting a 7-foot drop ceiling in there.
Drop the ceiling.
So,
Drop the ceiling. by a
well, I
foot.
mean,
That's not
What
going
does
to
that
change
accomplish?
anything.
Yeah, it doesn't change
I mean,
anything as
I'm
far as
trying to look at it
septic goes.
realistically, what are we accomplishing by somebody by making a 7-foot versus an 8-foot ceiling?
Well, if, for her to get it permitted properly, Roland has a habitable basement checklist that has to be followed. So it's not just as simple as filling out a permit and you get it. There's, you know, energy envelope and
No,
everything.
no,
that
there's
has to
other
be
things
met.
that have to go with that,
Right.
but it wouldn't play into the septic system issue,
Right.
which is the only issue we're dealing
Right.
with. So they could get around our issue by putting in a $300 drop ceiling.
Well, not really.
really.
But yeah, I mean, in a sense, yeah.
No, and
Then-
realistically,
and then
I
it
know
would-
people have done it.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm thinking really, but at the same time, I like the idea of putting a deed restriction on it, and the next time, I'm leaning towards that, but at the same time, I feel like there's just so much of this. That's why I hesitate.
And I do agree, we need to address that and form a consistent policy that apply in every situation, regardless of who did it. Because really, if we're worried about the septic system and public health, it doesn't matter if the builder did it, it doesn't matter if she did it, it doesn't matter if
Right.
some previous owner did it, it's either sufficient or it's not. But we haven't looked at it that way, I think we should.
No, well, that's how I look at it. It's
we
sufficient or
didn't.
it's not.
And I take as much responsibility as anybody, but when that British gentleman came in and wanted to sell his house with the illegal basement, we let him put a deed restriction on it.
I'm only going to say one more thing, and it goes back to the timing of when the basement was finished and when it wasn't. If she signed an agreement with the builder to build a house with an unfinished basement, is that correct? Or am I wrong?
No, I'm sorry, to clarify, I'm sorry, but I want to be specific. She signed an agreement with the builder to build a house with a finished basement.
Okay.
But then when she purchased the house, she signed a document that said, I know I'm getting an unfinished basement, so that she
Okay.
could go forward with the purchase.
And to be
Was
realistic, I
she-
can, sorry, go ahead.
Was it divulged to her, do you know if it was divulged to her, that there was a deed restriction?
Yes, she knew that there was a deed restriction when she purchased the home, and when she signed, not when she signed the purchase and sale, but when she purchased the home, she knew about the deed restriction because I reviewed the title and I told her about it. It's 92 deed restriction, it's clear as day on the title.
And she didn't think that by finishing off the basement, it was adding a room?
She's a
So
layperson.
it was in violation of the deed restriction?
She's a layperson. She doesn't consider that a bedroom, she considers that a space for her children to be on a separate floor from her playing, not under her feet. So she doesn't think.
Oh, you did advise her.
I did it, yeah, absolutely.
So she went into this knowing that she potentially wouldn't be able to finish the basement.
She absolutely sat down at the closing table knowing that there was a
But
potential
at the same
issue.
time, she became aware of this in between signing the purchase and sale, and you can blame her, but on the other hand, she's a single mom looking for a home, and I can also see
Right.
why she doesn't want to
Right.
back out
She-
between
she had
that, after being through the
belongings
finance
on a
industry.
truck.
Would have
She was
lost a
a
lot
week-
of money, right?
She was a
No.
week past she actually
she
would
would have
have.
lost a lot
She was
of
a
money.
week past closing. In fact, the builder had to put her up in a hotel for a weekend because he
How
couldn't
would she
get his
lose
home.
money, though, because he wasn't meeting the terms of the purchase and sales?
She didn't have a place to move. She had already sold her home, and she was out of her home for 10 days between closings.
That's why I don't understand why she has no legal right to go after him. I don't understand that.
I think she has a right, it just doesn't sound like he's going to be able to comply, Bill.
Number one, he's not, we can't get him to step up to the plate, but we couldn't get him to step up to the plate prior to closing either. And she did sign a release to him at closing, knowing that, in order to go forward, to get her building permit, he made her sign something that said she knew she was getting an unfinished basement.
So she was between a rock and a hard
She was
place.
between a
either
rock and a hard place.
Walking away from it, and losing money, or signing it with this in there.
Yeah.
Plain
she
and
would have
simple,
lost
it
money.
comes
She
down,
would, well.
it comes down
Lost
to,
money or
she-
lost the home?
She would have lost, yeah.
Yeah.
plain and simple, I sum this up by saying, somebody did something somewhat out of line. The person that's put in the lurch is being used as the pawn to get the Board of Health to be accommodating. And then I'll add a fourth one. If we don't, we're the bad guys. And I've sat here and felt that way on several occasions, and I'm not going to do it again. Well, I will do it again, because I'm going to vote no.
Yeah.
If the board votes in favor of it, I'm voting no. I just can't vote yes in favor of it.
So we have a motion, Andy, you want to ponder this some more?
I'll make a motion that we deny the application.
A second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? I think we've covered that. We vote? John?
No more discussion.
No? Vote?
I vote, so the motion
Motion
is to
deny it.
deny. I vote no.
I vote no as well.
I vote yes.
So it's 2-2.
Yes.
So I think we should table this and discuss it once we've had a chance to reconvene. I think we're split. I think we all need, I feel like I need a little more information, and I think that we need a little more discussion as a board on this, and I understand everyone's standpoint. This is very challenging,
I agree
all I'm
with,
going to say.
I agree with Bill wholeheartedly, with the exception for the fact that we have not done this consistently. Subsequent to this vote, however, I think we're going to continue it, Sam, until the next meeting. Subsequent to that vote, I would like to establish a firm policy that regardless of who did it or who's at fault, if it doesn't meet, we don't do it. I would support that moving forward. But we haven't had that discussion, we haven't acted in that capacity. So subsequent to this, I think we should have that. And Bill, I'll support whatever motion you make in that, because I think, idealistically, I'm in agreement with you, but we need to create this ideal situation where we've had that discussion and we put some of our bad decisions, if you will, behind us. But I don't like starting randomly with whoever comes before us. So do you want to continue this to the next meeting?
Okay. Thank you for your time, and I know you spent a lot of time on it, so I'm grateful.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
I'll just send you an email tomorrow with the time.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's about a little before 8. You want to go over the minutes in a couple minutes, in the little time we have?
So we're going to read minutes right now?
Sure, we have 3/7/15, which is that midday meeting we had relative to the Bennett Orchards.
Okay.
John, you weren't there. This has to do with the property behind Bucks.
Yeah. But this was the same property, different question that was here last time,
Yeah.
right? Yep.
Yeah. And the issue had to do with nitrogen loading. Essentially, DEP used to go through this whole process and approve it, and they had staff cuts, so they dumped it on us, and we were completely new to it. So-
Okay.
you're done.
All right, I just have one edit. That's it.
What is it?
You were not the chair at the time, you were the vice chair at the time.
He was acting as chair for that meeting, though.
It says Vice Chair Mitchell will serve as chairman.
Yeah, it says Vice Chair
Peter
Brad
wasn't.
Mitchell.
Yeah, I know. I just didn't know if that was important or not.
She
That's it.
accurately reflected it.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion?
Yep. Make a motion to accept the minutes for 3:17.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone abstain as you weren't present?
I will abstain, that's why I did not vote. Yep.
All right, it is now 8 o'clock. We have the continuation of the hearing on the tobacco regulations. So my understanding is we're still waiting on the MAHB
Yes.
or Mass Municipal.
Yes. So we can just continue it again.
So we had regulations, they do a lot of the legwork for us, and apparently they're backed up a little bit.
Okay, is this about age?
Yeah, and it was about age, and we basically rejected the idea of moving the legal age to 21.
Okay.
There was some good discussion, I think everybody had some good points, but in the end, we prevailed with sticking with what the state average was, I think, is probably an accurate reflection of.
So Westford is 21.
Yeah, I think, did they get a 19 or 21? Maybe
They're
it was
21.
I saw
Yeah.
a sign in a gas station
Yeah.
the other day.
Yeah, so the cigarette, if I can say a second, the cigarette regs have a lot to do with, well, a lot of our discussion has been wrapped around e-cigarettes, including them, not including them, the blunt wraps, the flavored tobacco, blah, blah, blah. I was pretty much the only person in favor of, restricting flavored tobacco, blunt wraps, that sort of a thing.
We unanimously
but-
approved regulating e-cigarettes regardless of whether they contain nicotine like tobacco.
Right, with our regs, which is, in my opinion, a good thing, because everyone's still trying to figure out what's in the e-cigarettes. So I think the majority, actually, maybe Shelley can get you, and maybe you already have, the template for the reg and the things that we've decided to include in our regs, and maybe a template of what all the options that Ms. Hamlet was giving us, to give you an update on, maybe she can get you both, so you can see the things that we had to decide, that checklist of about 15 things that we had to decide between. So we had a lot of discussion, we've had a lot of discussion since last summer, lots of people coming in to talk, lots of research articles and information handed out, and just lots of things that we either did understand, didn't understand, a lot of clarification going on, and so we sort of have what the majority wants in the reg at this point, but it doesn't mean that if you have a voice on something and an opinion on something, you should feel free to voice it.
And but there still seems to be some business waiting on.
So we've actually had a vote, and basically, we had several issues we wanted to discuss: e-cigarettes, the age, flavored tobacco, and then there's a regional tobacco control group that works with DPH and the Mass Association of Health Boards and Mass Municipal that has a model regulation.
Okay.
So
You're
we
waiting for
basically
that.
went through it point by point and voted some things in and some things out. So we basically, as they went through the model regulation, we adopted part of that, we rejected part of it, and they basically are supposed to come with a final draft
Oh,
of
okay,
that.
and that's what
So
you're
we're
waiting
waiting that.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
So we're continuing that.
Yes.
Okay, so we can go back to, so the minutes were done. Accounts payable, anything we have to sign?
Nope, no bills.
Correspondence?
We have this. I'm not sure everyone's read this.
And,
This is the letter about 11 Taylor.
I glanced
Straight.
through that.
I got an email from a homeowner as well in that area. I think it was McCormick was the last name. And I don't see that she signed, yes, maybe this is it, Deb McCormick, Reed Lane, I think she signed it. So I got an email basically stating some of these same things that I passed on to Shelley and to Jim. So I've gotten info on this. I did do a drive-by at one point. I wasn't sure. She wouldn't give me the address, so I wasn't sure if she was talking about the stove business across the street.
This
or if
one's
she
talking
was-
about both.
Or if she was talking about, 11 Reed Street, so,
I
so it
have,
looks like she sent an email or a letter to Shelley and to,
I
she also
have
called
a
Keith.
multitude of pictures of that site that
Well-
I didn't bring tonight because it wasn't on the agenda.
I lived in that neighborhood for 15 years, so I know a little bit about it. But I think we're going to put that on the agenda for next time. What I've asked Shelley to do also, I think
Yeah.
Roland's weighed in on this. I think legally, he at least feels he can do more about the abandoned property than he can about the stove shop. I think we could theoretically consider the stove shop to be a nuisance. I think we need to discuss that. You know, but I think that's part of our hoarding discussion, is where do these weigh in? And in my opinion, this kind of is probably top of the list of ones we should be looking at when we prioritize, but we can settle that at the next meeting.
Well, the big
Yeah, I mean,
difference
there's
there
history
is that's a
and-
business, not a residence.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stove thing is.
Well, theoretically, if it's, I mean, I think Roland has less he can say about outdoor storage and that sort of thing, I think is a nuisance from our perspective.
Well, it's zoned industrial B too.
Right, but if it's a nuisance, it's a nuisance. So,
And it can be nuisances for different reasons, so we have to
Right.
figure that out.
so I don't think it is, but I think we need to have that discussion, because we have a different authority over this than zoning or Roland do. So shall we put this on the agenda with our prioritization list for next week?
Yeah, and I think we need to do the prioritization first, and then I'm pretty sure this will be number one, but just if we can have our discussion and then,
And I think we do need, I would like to
Then
get back
talk.
to the, so one, I'd like the correspondence I said from the other boards, so we're in sync with what they're doing, but I do think we need to get back to the neighbors with some sort of letter or email as well.
Yeah, because
They've
the
addressed it to
letter,
Michelle.
yeah, the letter states that they've contacted somebody and have not ever heard back, and that was part of their, sounds like part of the irritation is they've not heard back from whomever they
Have you
first.
spoken to them, or?
She sends a letter every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to let them know about the next meeting, or do we want to go through this ourselves first?
can you give me a second? Let me just read through this. Okay, so
This has
any
been an
of those,
ongoing
okay,
thing for about
no.
30
This is-
years.
This is not true. She emailed me twice, and I emailed back and said, I'm passing this on to the Board of Health office and our health agent, and I will drive by myself as well. And then I said, because we need to be sure of the location you're talking about, because I don't live in that neighborhood, but honestly, I wasn't sure exactly what she was talking about. She didn't give any addresses. I said, what's the address? She never emailed me back or Jim back.
I think she was
And
complaining
then-
specifically about Keith, not you.
No. Health department or the fire department, okay? And never, she didn't have any responses from those offices. Well, that's not true. She did get a response. She did not comply and, or maybe, well, actually, Barbara Dane I never heard from, but the other lady, McCormick, never got back to me.
Okay, well, Barbara Dane's writing the letter. So
Yeah,
anyway,
okay,
regardless of
whatever.
that, my suggestion would be, let's look at this and discuss it, and if we're prioritizing this, let's figure out how to move forward and how to respond to Ms. Dane and the other signatories on this. At some point, I would like to at least let them know what we're doing, even if it's to say nothing. They deserve a response.
So we're gonna first prioritize, and then we're gonna have the different discussions of the different, obviously, I think everyone agrees 15 Taylor is gonna be, or whatever it is, Taylor is gonna be talked about.
11 through
11 through
15.
15 Taylor is gonna be talked about, but I think the approach we should have, and maybe this is exactly what you're thinking, is let's talk about all these things again in terms of what they are and prioritize them, and then have the specific
That's what I said. yeah.
discussions.
Yep, so let's roll this into discussion with all our other priorities, the private wells, the hoarding issues, including this one, we'll prioritize it. If we have other priorities that they're above this, we need to tell them that. If this is the highest, we'll look at it and we'll get back to them. And we also have to discuss the failed septic systems. So before we jump on this one, because we got one letter, let's look at them all and then we'll get back to them.
Yeah, let's prioritize first, and then we'll deal with things individually. And I'm not opposed to setting up the discussions for next time to say, yes, we are going to have a discussion about, a 10 to 15 Taylor,
11.
11 to 15 Taylor in the next meeting. I have no problem with that, but I just think our general discussions need to come first and make these decisions.
We need to
In
prioritize,
addition,
and then once we prioritize, we can focus, and I suspect this will be one of
Exactly.
them, but we don't know that till we have the discussion.
and exactly, and also that's the septic question, we got to deal with that, with the building stuff. So are we going to discuss 270 Harwood Ave? I wasn't able to
That's
go to
next on the
that.
agenda, so yes, we are, after we
Thank
finish
you.
this. Do we have any permits? We don't have any permits to sign?
There's 2 permits there.
Okay. There, John, you can start those off. So 270 Harwood Ave, we did have a site visit. This is the compost operation on Harwood Ave, as otherwise known as Halloran Farm. It is permitted through Department of Environmental Protection, not
DEP.
Department of Agricultural Resources, as has been suggested to me, so they really don't have any protection from nuisance laws, which I think is our main focus on this. We had Jim Gareffi was present. We also brought in Sumner Martinson, who's the DEP person. The owner of the property was there. The Conservation Commission, who's had some issues with the blow-down berm, was there, although we had very little interplay with them.
So hang on, the Conservation Committee was there too, right?
The representative for the
Conservation.
Conservation Commission was there. As it-
The owner of...
The owner was there, and the gentleman who operates the compost operation.
Right.
Gino, Bill, and myself were also there.
Okay.
So we toured the property. Sumner Martinson's with us. DEP basically said that the property was in compliance with DEP regulations. We looked at the property, talked about we talked about what he did and what he brought in. At this point, he's limited to fall yard waste only, largely leaf waste. He's not bringing in any food waste, which had been alleged before. He's not bringing any more grass clippings. I think it was a previous operator who did that. It wasn't the same one. There was a slight odor the day we were there. It was fairly warm and windy. The prevailing winds seemed to be moving away from most of the homes, actually moving towards Route 2, so away from the homes that were complaining. I did drive around the neighborhood. I didn't really see any wetlands, not to say they never smell, but nothing that I would typically associate it with heavy smells. Discussed with Jim about, what would trigger a Board of Health action, and we both kind of agreed that what really should trigger it is very foul odors for prolonged periods of time. Bill had driven by there, Gino and I had driven by there, Jim had driven by there. None of us had really experienced that, and at least we agreed, for those present at least, that we'd yet to see any conditions that would constitute a nuisance. Again, DEP said they were in compliance. What we discussed was there something we could do where the neighbors could create a log, so we could perhaps draw, and the owner would create a log of what his activities were, and the weather was, so maybe we could see if there's any association between a particular activity on the farm and a particular set of conditions that prompted the neighbors to complain. Jim seemed to think that was a good idea. Sumner said he'd done that before with mixed success, but it was on occasion successful. Bill and I had a discussion. I think we're torn whether we want the neighbors to know what the log will be used for, or whether, because sometimes they might fudge it or not. I don't know. I'm open to that one, but at least at this point, Bill, jump in or give your own report. We didn't see anything that we thought would constitute a nuisance. I do think it bears further checking by all of us, as well as Jim, to see if it gets worse, particularly during hot, wet weather. But we hadn't seen anything. Jim and I both discussed that we thought the neighbors at some point deserved a response from us on what we were doing, what we were thinking, and even if they didn't like it, because we'd have enough complaints from them that I'm not sure they know what our approach is, or, if we have an approach, or what we don't plan on doing it.
Now, what
Bill, did you have anything to add?
odor?
My only concern about the homeowners being aware that the operator of the operation there was keeping a log also, if they didn't know that, I just think it would be more of a
Double-blind study.
independent survey on their part. They wouldn't be basing their
You mean if we
their
keep the log?
reports.
No, if they didn't
No.
know that so we have the operator keeping a log of what his activities were.
Right.
What we want to
okay.
make sure is that they weren't consciously or unconsciously having, okay, it's noisy today, so it smells worse.
Right. So I just thought if the two logs were kept without each other knowing that that was happening, we could
Okay,
look at the logs and see
And then
if the
compare.
days they're doing something were there complaints. Did the complaints occur on days when nothing was going on over there?
Filter out any potential bias.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Brad, what you said earlier, foul odors, extended period of time, that if there was a foul odor for an extended period of time. So I think that's what we probably need to talk about, is what would be an extended period of time? What would that be?
Well, and I think we need to,
No, I mean, not so much for you per se, but I think as of us as a board and pull Jim into that too, is what would that be? So when we do have everybody in, we can say, this is it, blah, 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 we're going to keep a log, blah, 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 and this is what we would act on if
And I think
there
the
was a...
board,
so-
odors are very subjective by nature.
Exactly.
And we discussed this, so I think it's the board actually that basically has to make this decision, so it basically has to be in our opinions, collective opinions.
Okay.
So I think we also need to talk, so Bill, if you get a bad odor, you text us or something, so we can all go down there and see what it's like, or whoever can do down there. So we're all acting with as much of the same, I don't think that will violate the open meeting law, will it?
We go down
As long as three of
independently,
you aren't there at the same time.
or we can go down
As long as three
independently.
But we go
We can go
independently, so I think
independently.
if Bill sends a text or I send a text that, hey, it was pretty bad, why didn't you guys ride by?
Okay.
Odors is subjective, but I mean, I think basically the nuisance law says if in the opinion of the Board of Health.
Yeah.
So that
Not a
subject,
particular member.
not of any particular member. So
But
to
the
the
board,
extent
yeah.
possible, we share that information and we make a
Okay.
collective decision.
Okay. Well, I will just share, and I've shared this with Jim, and I'll be very open about it. I was out there at the beginning of all this sort of stuff, and so had several neighbors initiate with me off and on throughout the past 2 years. And I've been out like on a week period, at least a week to 2 week period, when the foul odors was a definite extended amount of time. And that was when we that's how we figured out that he was burning other stuff besides the leaves. It was the grass. And that's how we sort of caught on to that issue. So I have experienced the foul odors for an extended period of time, but it would be just good for us to define that
Yeah.
in terms of how long would that be? Longer than a day, longer than half a day, longer than a weekend, longer than a week? What kind of exactly are we going to
Well, I
think
think
about
we need
this?
to use our collective judgment.
So-
I don't think it's realistic to pin it down and say 3.5 days or a majority of the board or things like that. I mean, there are going to be unusual situations where we need to give them some leeway.
Yeah.
There's going to be violations where we want to give them, or there may be violations, we want to give them less leeway. So I think it needs to be in the collective judgment of the board. I also had heard you before suggest that perhaps some of the odors you experienced were from wetlands or something else. I think we need to come to an agreement on that if we're going to take action on this.
Yep.
But at this point, I don't think we've had the data for us to make a decision that there's been a nuisance present. There may be, once we start looking closely and,
Yeah.
the neighbors, maybe we want some sort of they text Shelley or text the office or email the office right away so we know to go out there.
Yeah, yeah. All I'm saying is, the fall that we figured out he was putting grass in with his leaves, there
Right.
was definitely the odor for the extended period.
And they've
It wa-
reportedly
it was-
stopped that,
It was
so-
like a month long, so I think it will become obvious as it is extended. But I'm just wondering, as we look at this and as we go forward, that we, kind of have an idea before we have the neighbors in, that's sort of how we're operating on, to have some sort of framework for that.
Right, and again,
I don't think
that-
we need like 3.5 days, because everything's going to be
Right.
different, but we need some kind of a framework before they come in.
I think the general framework needs to be that the board has to be informed when there's a bad odor, and we should do our best to get down there so we can use our collective judgment
Yeah,
to make
more
that
than one
determination.
person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what are our options or possible actions we can take if we as a board agree that there's an issue?
That's a good point.
My-
We do have options.
My suggestion would be that if we can pinpoint not just a particular day that the odor is occurring, if in fact it does, it may be a particular time of the day. If they're turning the piles, say, between 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we can pinpoint what they're doing at that time and maybe work out something with the neighbors where they can do that when the least number of people are around.
Right.
After going through the place, doing that walkthrough, I didn't get any sense of any odor that was real strong.
And that's assuming that nothing is going on that's not allowed, right? So,
Correct.
food stuff or grass clippings.
So
If
our,
we see something like that, then,
And like Ian said, that was the biggest issue.
Yeah.
And that's disappeared,
so our authority and our options runs from everything from shutting the guy down
right.
to you need to make certain management changes.
And this is a.
And the idea of the logs say, if they complain whenever it's above 90 degrees and he turns the piles,
Right.
we might, as an order, say, if it's over 90 degrees or there's
Right.
an inversion, which I think is probably the bigger issue with some of the
Right.
bad odor,
Yep.
worse odors they've had, have been when there's inversions in the fall. We can basically say, don't do this when there's an inversion,
Yeah.
don't do this when it's over 90 degrees. If he violates that or that doesn't seem to do it, assuming we continue to have a problem, we can shut them down.
Okay.
But I don't think we'd start there.
Right, or
And that's the
not
whole
on,
purpose of the log, is to say, okay, what activities might
Yeah.
be managed to better control this?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to folks?
Makes perfectly good sense to me.
So what we can do is, can we have Jim, and I think we probably want an invite to the neighbors and Mr. Halloran for the next meeting to discuss this. I will have an offline conversation with Jim and suggest maybe he can draft up a log.
so we're not going to talk first about how, aren't we going to just figure out what you just said, like inversions, this and that, and we're going to do that after we get the logs and compare the logs?
Yes, so we have to design a
Okay.
log, and I think, and we can compare that to, the data on the temperature and all that stuff. I think there's, airports usually have that sort of thing. We've got one over in Boxborough, which should have it. I know the owner of the airport, I'd probably
Okay.
get that. So we can, if there's a whole rash of complaints on July 2nd through 3rd. Let's look at what the owner's doing on that states, let's look what the temperatures were, the meteorological conditions, and if we start to see a trend, we know we can, and we may not see anything, and I think we need to tell the neighbors that as well.
And then I also think we need to be able to tell them too, that if there is, if we judge there is an air pollution nuisance, which is what this, or we would act on, because that's what we're over.
So I would leave out air
Hang on,
pollution.
hang on, let me finish. So if we judge there is a nuisance, and it would be an airborne nuisance, which is what we're over, then if we were to judge there was a foul odor for an extended period of time, then we would be able to act on it. And then that's what we're going to tell the neighbors next time,
Right,
correct?
but we could act in
Okay.
multiple capacities.
Okay.
Everything from shutting them down to requiring management changes.
Okay.
Now, my take on this is that the nuisance regs 111, chapter 111, section 125A are really our biggest lever into this.
Yeah.
Jim's also citing DEP air pollution regs, which I don't think quite fit as well, and I think it's really DEP's regs versus ours.
Yeah.
We can use them, but
Yeah.
if we can't find them in violations in the nuisance requirements, then I think we're on weak ground to use others. And odors are part of nuisance.
Yeah, and nuisance is broad, which is good.
Right.
Because we can use that in many facilities.
But I'm less comfortable using the
Right,
regs
the
Jim
DP.
cites, and if there really is an odor problem, the nuisance regs work fine for these. The
Yeah.
nuisance law.
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to be clear on that point, that we are going to mention that to them, because I think that's good, because that's true, that's what we will do, but we don't really know if we'll ever even use that, and we don't know how we'll put that into play. And it may take a long time to get the logs back from the owner and the use and from.
And we need to be upfront.
And it may never come to conclusion on anything, but at least we know that they know that we're working on it, and that if we have foul odors for an extended period of time, we can do something about it.
Well, and they also need to know that it's foul odors, in our opinion, not theirs, because odors are so subjective.
Well, we are the deciding board, so yes,
Right. So,
yes.
but I've been in a lot of odor complaint situations where the people who live behind it decide it's a foul odor, and the regulators go in and they don't.
Yeah.
So I think we need to say that, it really is our decision, we're gonna
Yep.
come out there when you tell us, but we have to use our judgment, not yours.
Yeah, because we have to be fair to both sides.
Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
So you want the abutters and Halloran in at the next meeting?
Yes, or invited.
So what am I doing? Direct abutters, butters within 100 feet?
I think Butters on both Richards Way, which is that cul-de-sac, and then on both sides of Colonial Drive, going back at least to that, to Stowe, or whatever that first little left is, they're all subjected to that. That's all I'm thinking. I don't know about
And certainly
Harwood
anybody who's
Avenue.
complained in the past over it, I think we should let know. I suspect. once
Harwood
we let
Ave,
them
I don't know.
Could
Harwood
There
Ave,
is-
too.
there is one house on
fire
Harwood,
and
two houses.
just send invitations to those that have
Complained.
already complained, and if they want,
Please notify your neighbors.
yeah, put
you
it
don't
in the
know.
letter that if you know other people that are concerned about this, please feel free to invite them.
Well, we're talking about maybe 10 or 12 letters, right? It's the 4 people on Colonial, it's the 6 people on Richards Way, it's one on Harwood.
Well,
I don't know.
I would suggest either
I think we should do
going
it to
with
everybody.
like direct abutters or abutters within a certain amount of feet, and then somebody can't say,
Yeah.
well, you told them, but not me.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
direct abutters and anybody who's complained,
Okay.
and ask them to get the word out to others who may have an interest.
Yep.
And they may not like what we tell them, but I do think we at least owe them an explanation of what we're doing.
Yep, as long as it's clear and it's consistent as best as we can.
I've got plenty of other things to do on Tuesday night if nobody votes me in again, so.
Well, the mere fact that, you know, something's being done and
Brad,
it's
get outta
being
here.
recognized is worth something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they've been complaining, and through nobody's fault, I don't think we need to come up with a consistent approach to give them an answer.
Yeah, they haven't been ignored.
No, I have gone out consistently as many times as you can imagine, on holidays, holiday weekends. I've gone out a lot, because I'm concerned about it. I don't want them to feel like, you know, they're ignored.
But
And-
again, for us to take action, I think we need
Yeah.
a consensus.
Yep, and I've been out many,
Nothing against
many.
your nose or
mi-
your perception, but
But, yeah, but I've been out many times when it's been absolutely horrible, and times when they've said it was horrible and it was nothing. So,
I was working for the state, and I had an inspector went on an odor complaint. I had the complainant call me up and tell me the guy was too old and his schnoz was gone, so we need as many people as possible to work.
exactly. I know.
Is there any other business?
I just have one other thing I would like added to the agenda for next time. The community septic loan program, I want to bring that list in, and I'll give you an update of what money has been given out, so you can let me know how many more people we can send letters to, because the treasurer wants these all done by December, like all the money given out by December, otherwise we have to reapply.
Okay, that sounds fair.
So
We
I'll
can do
bring that
that.
in.
Do we have extra money?
So far, yes. And so there's still 6 more people on the list, so I'll bring that list and what the amounts of their quotes were, and the board can determine which ones to send letters to.
Good.
So, and didn't we already prioritize all 12 of them? I think we did, right?
Yep.
So you just bring them in the priority order, right?
Yep.
So,
Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
adjourn.
Adjourn. Thank you.